All right, guys, you ready? Ground test 270 is ready to taxi from my line with information. We'll be working the west.
Test 70, wind 3001, section outside, contact car.
Do not pass, switching hour to 270.
Well, line up and wait.
Line up and wait.
Tower Naval 016, west taking from the grass.
Down 016, transition to grass. Approved.
Naval 016, transition to grass.
There's effective translation lift.
Down 876, roger. Runway 14 without delay, knock pad, a wind 350 at 8, clear to land traffic, departing the knock pad to the west, 872.
This is STEM in 30.
I'm Beth.
And I'm Marty.
And today we are at Naval Air Station, Patuxent River.
And we're going to take you on a tour of United States Naval Test Pilot School.
What you saw is awesome, and it's definitely a part of Test Pilot School. But it's not all.
Today we're going to dive into Naval Test Pilot School and all of the different components.
It's kind of like a normal school, meaning you have to go to class and study. Lots of studying.
And then there's the flying. Test pilots have been pushing the envelope for a long time.
Let's look back at the history of test pilots.
Test pilots are trained to fly and evaluate new aircraft. The aircraft they fly are often experimental, newly produced, or modified. These pilots are part engineer. The planes they fly have a higher chance of something going wrong. And if something does go wrong, not only do they need to survive, but they need to be able to figure out exactly what the problem is and how to fix it, or at least be able to communicate to other engineers those specific problems. Pilots fly these aircraft while performing specific maneuvers known as flight test techniques. These tests don't necessarily evaluate an entire aircraft. Often they're testing a series of minor systems in order to isolate specific variables to ensure stability, performance, and safety. Test flying began in World War I, not long after the Wright brothers first took to the skies. Testing experimental aircraft was, and remains, one of the more dangerous types of flying, due to the unknown nature of the aircraft being tested. Therefore, a test pilot has to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Test piloting has helped to advance and shape modern aircraft, like Chuck Yeager, who flew faster than the speed of sound in 1947 flying the Bell X-1. Yeager proved that the human body could fly without injury at the speed of sound, taking us closer to the possibility of spaceflight. In fact, President Dwight D. Eisenhower insisted that the first American astronauts, the Mercury 7, be military test pilots. Other notable test pilots have included astronauts Jim Lovell, Neil Armstrong, and Eileen Collins, and famed pilots Jimmy Doolittle, Charles Lindbergh, and Jacqueline Ariel, the first woman pilot admitted to France's military flight test center.
If you want to become a test pilot, you go to school.
And this is one of the best schools in the world.
Let's learn a little bit more about United States Naval Test Pilot School.
Hello, I'm Commander Jeremy DeBonds, Commander, United States Navy, Commanding Officer, United States Naval Test Pilot School. The United States Naval Test Pilot School was founded in 1945 at the Navy's Flight Test Center in Patuxent River, Maryland. The school's purpose was to ensure that test pilots were formally trained to handle the high demands of new aircraft technology. The early training program was only 10 weeks long. The course today takes almost a year and has students in the classroom for over 500 hours and flying for 100. Each class of established pilots come from all branches of the military and international partners. While at Test Pilot School, they fly multiple different aircraft, including jets, gliders, and helicopters. Pilots are trained to test and collect data on a single variable at a time. Beyond this pilot training, Test Pilot School also develops procedures and techniques for test pilots that are used at other schools throughout the world. The school's staff are all experts in the aviation test community and some of the finest aviators and engineers in the world. The staff of the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School continue to study engineering and learn along with the students. Graduates from U.S. Naval Test Pilot School have gone on to amazing careers in the military. They've set records, flown in space, and even become admirals. The Naval Test Pilot School will continue to be at the forefront of innovation and technology and will lead the way in testing the limits of flight.
It was almost time to go flying. But before we ever got into the helicopter, there were a lot of steps we had to go through, with safety being at the forefront.
We started by getting suited up for flight gear, including flight suits, boots, life vests, gloves, and helmets.
Next was egress training, where we went out to the flight line and made sure that we each knew how to get into and out of the helicopter, how the doors worked, and what to do in an emergency. We also had to be checked out by the flight surgeon before being cleared to fly.
Before every flight, we had a production meeting with the STEM and 30 team and the pilots who would be flying to discuss our goals.
This was then followed by a 90-minute safety briefing. Here we went over the dance card, which was the plan for each flight. It included locations and any maneuvers that were going to be performed. Throughout these briefings, safety was the primary topic of concern. Plans were discussed for every contingency, from losing power in the engines, to what would happen if we hit a bird, to the maximum ranges of performance the helicopter would operate within.
It was finally time to take to the air.
You may have noticed that Beth and I are on separate flights. That's because of the configurations of the seats in this helicopter. But the cool part is, you get to have a front row seat with us.
Test pilot training doesn't start here in the air. It starts in the classroom.
Hi, I'm JT. I'm the Chief of Academics at the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School. I used to be an Army helicopter pilot flying Blackhawks, Lakotas, and the mighty UH-1 Huey. So the classroom experience here looks an awful lot like a typical graduate education, such that the student spends the morning in the classroom learning about the theory, and then the afternoon in the aircraft learning about how the theory works. So the beauty of the TPS education is that we strike this really delicate balance between theory and application. Let me show you. Okay, so I'm going to draw a graph to explain what I mean. On the y-axis here, I'm going to write theory. It's some understanding of the laws of nature that drive, say, the way an aircraft flies. And so in a graduate education, or even an undergraduate education, you're typically up here where you have a whole lot of theory. On the x-axis, I'm going to have a label application. And by this, what I mean is it's the real life side of things. And typically, when you deal with military training, say like flight school, you learn a lot about how it happens in real life, but you might not have an understanding of where the forces come from that are causing that aircraft to go. Right? And so the beauty here is that if we were to have kind of a boundary, it's hard to have all the theory and all the application at once. And what we have to do is hit this special mark here. That's where USN TPS lives. So a typical day for me really involves spending a lot of time in the classroom, teaching classes on, say, aerodynamics, or on topics like automation for autonomous systems, computer algorithms, things of that nature. And then every so often, I get the pleasure of still getting in the aircraft and flying just a little bit, just to stay relevant. I don't think my job is that hard. I think that it's just so much fun to be able to interact with the people that I get to interact with on a daily basis. And even though every day ends feeling like there's a list of things that didn't get accomplished, you know, it's just something more to work on tomorrow. It's the greatest job in the world.
Let's meet some of the amazing students at the United States Naval Test Pilot School.
Test pilot school's been interesting. It's been great.
It's cool. It's cool.
I think that the wealth of experience and skill, I don't think you're going to find anywhere else in the Navy.
In order to fly the aircraft to its limits and find its limits, you have to do it safely. You have to be well educated. You have to know what you're doing. Test pilot school gives you all of that foundation. Access to that knowledge is hard to come by anywhere but here.
Everyone here is the best and the brightest in their career field, so learning from these people has been insane. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to the engineering and physics behind flight. A lot of these guys, the instructors here, I've known their names.
Diversity of aviators in the class is probably our greatest learning opportunity, even more so than the actual academic material.
And coming here where people have all different types of missions, different backgrounds, different experiences, and we're all learning the same thing in the classroom.
The Air Force is funding heavily into emerging technology.
There are always new aircraft, there are always new software programs coming down the line, there's always new weaponry that needs to be tested. The space industry has a lot of opportunity.
The Air Force is investing in that. 5 years from now, I've got no clue what my job is going to be and what kind of mission I'll end up supporting.
In the world of limited time, resources, money, you don't want to repeat what anyone else has done, you want to push the limit.
Today, we're flying in a helicopter, but at test pilot school, they use a lot of different aircraft. Let's take a look.
So we have 12 different type model series of aircraft in the hangar at Test Pilot School, and a large portion of what we do is adaptability, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, flying different airplanes, seeing how different engineering teams solve problems. It's a critical aspect to our curriculum. It's big, it's heavy, it's slow, and these are all things that are completely different than anything that's in the fleet right now. And part of that helps us to develop the adaptability of our student test pilots. We use it for our high-risk flight testing on the rotor wing side. We're allowed to do auto rotations all the way to the surface, and it helps us develop some of those high-risk profiles that our aviators are going to be developing in the future. We'll do types of flying in it that they won't do in flight school, like stall spin, formation, and we also use it for performance introductions and introduction of other test techniques. The airplane is unique. It's got some old systems, some very robust jet engines, and it's got some very bad flying qualities, which makes it really good for us in the school, because part of what we identify are deficiencies in airplanes and why they might not be good at a particular mission set. And they'll fly it to do aerobatics like loops, we'll do spins, and obviously engine out gliding flight.
A big part of becoming a test pilot is learning to isolate variables. But what does that mean? Let's find out.
So in flight tests, it's really important to be able to isolate variables. So when you're trying to test something, if you have 10 variables and in between tests you change all 10, you don't know what the effect of each individual variable was. So if you can isolate a single variable and keep everything else constant, then you know the exact effect of that one variable. So it makes it a lot easier to build an entire model of the system and understand how it's working fundamentally.
Isolating variables might sound difficult, but it's something you can try at home.
Hi, Hi, I'm Ella, and I'm going to show you how to isolate variables with a paper airplane. Here are the things you will need. 8x11 paper, 1-inch paper clips, a tape measure, a pen or a pencil, masking tape, and a hula hoop. The first thing you'll want to do is make a paper airplane. If you're not sure how to make a paper airplane, scan this code! After you have folded your airplane, put a piece of masking tape on the floor. This is where you'll stand to launch your plane. Have someone hold your target about 4 feet away. Let's see how this paper airplane flies. Pretty well, but I didn't get it through the hoop. Let's see if we can make it fly better. Let's find the center of gravity on our plane. This is the balancing point of an airplane. At this point, there is just as much mass in the front of it as there is behind it. If you turn your airplane upside down and balance it on your finger, you'll find the center of gravity. Once you find your center of gravity, mark it with a pencil. By using paper clips as weights, we're going to move the center of gravity to see where it needs to be to make the plane more stable. Today we will be testing for one variable, center of gravity, which affects airplane stability. A stable airplane will be easier to fly through our hoop. To start, let's put some paper clips at the back end of the plane. Stand with your toes behind the masking tape and toss your plane. Did you get it through the hoop? Nope. When we put the paper clips on the back of the airplane, the center of gravity moved farther back. The extra weight pulled the back of the plane down. This made our plane unstable. Let's try something else. I'm going to put some paper clips here in the front. Maybe this will work better. Ready! Launch! Well, that didn't work too well either. When we moved the paper clips to the front of the plane, the center of gravity moved forward, and that pulled down the front of the plane. The airplane is still unstable. So where's the best place to put the weight? Let's put some paper clips right in the middle of the plane where we found the center of gravity and see how that works. Yes, right through the hoop. If the weight is added near the center of gravity, we have a more stable flight. If you've isolated the center of gravity variable and your plane still isn't flying well, consider the other variables to isolate. Is there a window open or a fan on? Are you throwing it differently? What are the shape of the wings? What other variables might need to be isolated for a good flight? If you want to learn more about how things fly, scan here. Let us know how your paper airplane did in the comments. Yes!
Graduates from test pilot school end up in a lot of different places. Let's find out where they've gone.
I definitely have heroes. My first heroes would be my parents. They've taught me perseverance and discipline. They gave me that foundation I needed as a young woman to then move forward and achieve my dreams later on in life. I was fortunate enough to get accepted to the United States Naval Academy. It was the summer before my senior year at the Academy that I got a ride in an F-18. That's the first time that I realized I can be a Marine and be a fighter pilot at the same time. This is the best of both worlds, count me in. And so I was selected to go to test pilot school. And it was during that time that I started looking at what are my future options going to be in the Marine Corps? What do I really want to do?
NASA says it's accepting applications for new astronauts.
Of the roughly 3,500 applicants NASA is expecting, only about 15 will be selected for training.
And I thought to myself, well, that's crazy. There's no way that I would ever be accepted to become an astronaut. And I went home and I spoke with my husband about it. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, why would you ever pass up such an incredible opportunity? If you never apply, you're never gonna know if you could make it or if you could have made it. That really changed my perspective on life. So I applied to become an astronaut. And I was very fortunate enough to be selected in the class of 2013.
I'm thrilled to be joining the NASA team and looking forward to the next 2 years of training. Thank you.
And we've been training ever since, preparing to support current missions on board the International Space Station And now we're preparing for the Artemis mission.
Just as the United States was the first nation to reach the moon in the 20th century, so too will we be the first nation to return astronauts to the moon in the 21st century.
Artemis and our mission to the moon is no longer some far-fetched dream or some science fiction idea. This is reality. We are going. What we're going to learn on the moon goes beyond space exploration. It benefits humans on Earth. It gives enthusiasm to our younger generation to go after their dreams and to help be a part of this evolution of our human race.
Have you ever heard of a pilot who started out not really liking to fly? Let's meet one.
I thought I wanted to be a medical doctor. Typed in aviation, psychology, engineering. Out came human factors, specifically aviation human factors. So I started pursuing that, and I quickly realized that it's very hard to provide context to individuals in the field if you don't have experience doing what they're doing. And so I started to take flight lessons and quickly realized it was not something that I thoroughly enjoyed, but it was solely due on misconceptions of safety and ill understanding of how systems were engineered. My flight instructor pulled me aside and said, "I am not sure you thoroughly like this." And I said, "Yeah, I'm a little hesitant." And my plan was to get the rating and then use that as a credential builder for being able to have conversation with pilots and provide input. Around the 20th hour, my instructor said, "Today we're not going to do a lesson. We're going to go fly along the coast, and we're just going to have fun." And I remember very distinctly flying over the coast and looking down into the water and seeing boulders underneath the surface of the ocean. And something clicked, and I went, well, there's risk in everything, but if I have an opportunity to see this whenever I want, this makes it worth it. I remember learning how to drive. It was later on in life. I remember the stress of just, am I looking at the right stuff? Am I looking at the correct mirrors? Am I shifting appropriately? And there's an apprehension that's natural in human nature anytime you're doing something new. There are different ways to approach it. You can be the first to do it, and you have to figure it out all on yourself. There's a great quote, you learn more from your mistakes than you ever do from your successes. If it was a success, everything that you had planned for occurred just as you thought it was going to happen. Where with a mistake or an error, which is a great learning opportunity, you learn so much from it on how to modify it.
As you can see, Naval Test Pilot School isn't easy.
But there are a lot of things that you can learn from Test Pilot School.
Classroom work is important. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Step outside your comfort zone and try something new. All of these skills will help you in a future that hasn't been imagined yet.
Seeing the work they do up close illustrates how dedicated they are to their mission to train the next generation of test pilots. We'd like to thank Naval Test Pilot School for having us out.